So we did the Mishnah of mitzvahs ha'av al haben. I'm sorry, mitzvahs haben al av. We were very meticulous in our reading that there seems to be a mitzvah on the ben. But the ben's too young to fulfill his mitzvah, am I right? He's 30 days old. He can't do the Pidyon haben himself. So the Torah appointed the father to do the Pidyon haben on behalf of the son. In event that the father did not do so, the son will have to be poded himself when he becomes bar mitzvah. And then the chiyuv shifts from the father back to its original chiyuv, which is the son's chiyuv. And we pointed out that since it's really the son's chiyuv, therefore the Mishnah is very careful about its choice of mitzvahs haben, which means the real mitzvah is on the son, and the father, as it says in the Mishnah, al ha'av means he sort of steps into the son's shoes in order to implement the mitzvah on behalf of the son. Now, I don't know if we got a chance to discuss the nusach habracha of the father who's being poded his son. Even if we did touch on it, I don't think we did an adequate job. So the Rambam is in Hilchos Bikurim. Make a note of it, Perek Yud Aleph. And the Rambam says that when the father is poded his son, he recites the bracha al Pidyon haben. Bracha Hashem, etc.
How did you do this? Al versus la.
Al versus la. Right? So I think it's good to go over it again. When the son, if he reaches bar mitzvah, in the event that his father was not poded him, he'll make the bracha liftos. And that's the Rambam in Hilchos Bikurim with regard to Pidyon haben and Bechor. So we mentioned last time the Rivash. The Rivash was a Spanish great scholar some 6 centuries ago, a little bit more. And he has a prolific amount of tshuvas. And in one of his tshuvas, he writes that the mitzvah of Pidyon haben is on the son himself. The father is really a shliach of the son. And therefore, the bracha shifts from lamed to al. And if we open up the Rambam in Hilchos Brachos, Perek Yud Aleph, we'll see that the Rambam says that if, let's say, I'm putting up a mezuzah in your house, then I'll make the bracha al kvias mezuzah. But if I'm putting up a mezuzah in my own house, I'll make the bracha likva mezuzah with a lamed. And the Rambam explains that the reason for this distinction is because when the shliach implements the mitzvah, the bracha shifts from lamed to al. So therefore, let's say, for example, on the night of Erev Pesach, there's a mitzvah of bir chametz, right? We do a b'dika, and the next morning we burn the chametz. So the Rambam is going to claim that if I'm doing the bir on your behalf, do me a favor, you know how to, cross it out?
Do neither?
You know the red, you press the red. Yes, just press that button. Okay.
Well,
so if I'm doing a bedika in your house as a shliach, the Rambam says I make the bracha al bir chametz. But if I'm doing the bir in my own house for myself, then it's going to be levar chametz. Do we have a general principle?
Okay.
So just 1 second. So applying that principle, we now understand in the light of the Rivash why the Rambam has the bracha for the father, according to the Rivash's interpretation, with an al, whereas if the son is being poded himself, will be with a lam.
Rebbe doesn't have to answer this if it's a little off topic, but let's say it's you're saying the bracha for a mitzvah for you and
the Rambam also addresses that. And the Rambam says that since you're also a shliach for someone else, you shift the nusach to al. So I don't have here a Rambam Hilchos Brachos. I don't want to spend the time looking for it, but we will have to double check. But that's how I remember the Rambam. Now, The real strange thing about this whole story is the Rambam in Hilchos Milah. With regard to Milah, the Rambam says that the father, when he does the Milah on his son, which is one of the cases in this Mishnah called Mitzvah Ben Al Av, he makes the bracha lamu with a lamed. Now, according to the Rivash, Pidyon Ben means that the father is really fitting into the shoes of the son to represent him and be his shliach, and therefore the bracha is with an al. We would have guessed that in Milah, the same principle should apply. The father is really doing the Milah on behalf of the son.
Hi, Rabbi.
How are you? Where are you coming from? French? There's some place where they speak French? Or
I speak French. Right?
I know.
How'd you know?
of course, I know you're Moroccan,
Ooh.
and if you're Moroccan from Montreal, you got to speak French. In
Bye-bye.
fact, even if you're an Ashkenazi from Montreal, you have to speak French.
Yeah, obviously. French is goaded. They're all hating on French.
Yeah. They're crazy in Montreal. Anyway,
we baguette.
so
That's like need more.
So listen carefully. What the Rambam surprises us, he throws like a curveball, is that in Milah, when the father implements the Milah, he says Lama. Comes along the Rivash, and he says the following: that the chiyuv on the father is the father's own chiyuv. It's his personal chiyuv to be mal his son. He's not representing his son. Therefore, he'll make the bracha with a lam. And herein lies a fundamental difference between the two cases that are included in the mitzvah, in the Mishnah. One case is Pidyon Ben, and the other is Milah. When the father is doing the Milah, he is fulfilling his own obligation to do the Milah of his son. He's not filling in as a shliach for the son. But in the case of Pidyon Ben, if we go with the Rivash, then the father steps into the shoes of the son. The real chiv is on who? On the son, and the father's only a shliach.
So for if a son was to do a milah when he gets older, he would be doing it as a shliach for his father?
No. So here we have to say that there are two chiyuvim in milah. There's a chiyuv of the father, there's a chiyuv on the son. As long as the son is not a bar chiyuv, he's less than bar mitzvah, so he doesn't have the chiyuv, the Torah imposes the chiyuv on the father. Once the son becomes a bar chiyuva, then we might have two different individuals who are obligated in a partnership to do the milah. The father will have to make sure that the son does the milah, but the real chiyuv now is on the son himself. But only because he's bar mitzvah. Before he's bar mitzvah, the chiyuv is totally on the father.
Actually, I figured that. Never mind.
Okay. So now, let's ask the following question. In the list of mitzvahs ha'av ala ben, we have Talmud Torah. Now, I want to make sure that you have that inside. You'll see the Tanu Rabbanon. Let's see where we can find it so we know that we saw it.
Torah.
Yeah, where is it?
About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up from the big lines.
Oh, from the white lines. Ha'av chaim v'bno, lamulo, liftoso, l'lamdo Torah, etc. So now, we're going to really have an interesting question over here, because if we're splitting between Milah and Pidyon Ben, where does Talmud Torah fit in? Meaning, on the one hand, in the case of Milah, it's the father's obligation. On the other hand, in the case of Pidyon Ben, it's the son's obligation. What about Talmud Torah? When a father teaches his son Torah, is he just representing the son as a shliach because the son is too young to learn Torah? Or no, it's the father's personal obligation. So let's leave that question for a moment. And let's turn to a Gemara here at the bottom of the page, Omer Rab Yirmiyah. You have it? Omer Rab Yirmiyah, Hakol Modim. We'll explain what that means, Hakol Modim. And here we turn to the next Amud, which is Chavtes Amud Beis. Kol Hecha Doleka Elef Hamesh Slaim Hu Kodem Libno. Okay, let's understand. Supposing the father was not Hadui, meaning his father was not pod to him. So you have a case where A father and a son are both Bechor. Each one is a Bechor. And now, what happens is the father needs Pidyon, the son needs Pidyon. The father only has 5 slun, which is the amount he has to give to the Kohen for Pidyon Haben. Should he use that 5 slun to be poda himself, or should he use that 5 slun to be poda his son? Which comes first? Meaning it's this is what we call the laws of Kidima, of priority. Which gets priority? His own obligation vis-a-vis himself, or his obligation vis-a-vis his son.
To make the suggestion that since he's being a shliach, he took upon himself somebody else's obligation, he has to do theirs first.
But keep in mind that before he took upon himself that obligation, he was already obligated in his own pidyon.
Yeah.
Unless he gave birth to a son before his bar mitzvah. But let's assume that he was at least bar mitzvah when he had a son. Excuse me. So therefore, he's already chayv in Pidyon Haben way before his son came into this world.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be the father, because the father has his own obligation first, and then he should do it to people.
Excellent. Well, let's see why. The Gemara gives that explanation, and the Gemara says, "Who kodem libno?" He should be poda himself, and when he gets another 5 slum, he'll be poda his son. My time. Why is that so? And the Gemara answers, and this is a principle that you should write down because it applies in many different areas of Shas. Mitzvah de gufe odif. A mitzvah that's incumbent upon your guf, odif. The word odif means it takes priority. So when you're doing the mitzvah as a father to be poda your son, that's not a mitzvah begufo. That's a mitzvah on the gufa of the son. And this all fits in very well with the Rivash, because the Rivash is going to claim that whereas in the case of Pidyon Haben, the father is only a shliach, so it's not mitzvah the gufe. Does everybody see that? In the case of Pidyon Haben, whose guf is actually chayav in Pidyon? Everyone, whose guf is chayav in Pidyon? The son, correct? The father is only a shliach, but the father doesn't have a mitzvah the gufe. But in the case of a father whose father did not be poda, he has to be poda himself, that's already mitzvah the gufe.
What's podem?
Kodem means comes first, it takes precedence. Otherwise called prioritize, right? Otherwise called adifa. Adifa means it gets priority.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. Why the father? I'll be lost.
Because of a principle called mitzvah de gufe adif. Do you see it in the Gemara?
Yeah.
You're on Chavtet Summit days?
Yeah.
Good. Mitzvah de gufe adif. There are 2 categories of mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah de gufe and a mitzvah which is lav de gufe. A mitzvah de gufe means it's a mitzvah incumbent on myself, on my guf. I have to do the Pidyon Haben because I was not padui and I am a bechor. But in the case of being poda your son, that's not mitzvah de gufe. Here the guf.
Can you define it?
Mitzvah de gufe means a mitzvah on your own self. A mitzvah de lav gufe means a mitzvah that you have to fulfill vis-a-vis someone else's guf, or if we want to use the Rivash's terminology, you are a shliach on behalf of your son, and your mitzvah de gufe gets priority because your chiyuv comes first. With regard to shliach, very nice. When you get 5 slime, you'll be poda your son. But right now, you have first urgency to be poda yourself because of mitzvah de gufe. So I need a choir here, and I'm going to count to 3. When we get to 3, everybody's going to say 2 words as to why he's poda himself first. 1, 2, 3. Everyone, mitzvah de gufe. Okay, it's very important that you have this down, mitzvah de gufe. Because now we're going to go back to Chavtes Amud Aleph, and I'm going to ask you the following question. Let's say yeshiva tuition costs 10, whatever the 10 is, 10,000, 10 million, whatever you have to pay for yeshiva tuition. What's the tuition here in this?
30.
35.
30, 35? Okay. So let's say tuition is 35. All you have in your bank is 35. Now you have to send your son to yeshiva, but you want to go to yeshiva. You didn't get a yeshiva education. You only have 35. So what do? Should you spend the money and send your son to get educated in yeshiva, or should you take it for yourself and you'll go to yeshiva?
I think like logically, the son, but what we're doing right now, it's himself. He has to mitzvah de gufo.
Excellent. Mitzvah de gufei. So guess what? The Gemara does not apply the principle of mitzvah de gufei.
But what would you do, Rabbi?
I don't know what I would do. I would look into the Gemara and then decide what I do. Okay, so let's look into the Gemara and see what we can figure out here. The Gemara says the following. I'm sorry, it's on Omen Beis. I made a mistake.
Wait, what?
On Chav Tes Amid Beis, I'll tell you where to find it. 3 lines down, when it gets wide, do you see where it says Tanu Rabbanon?
Yeah. Hulil
Ulilmod, Ubino Lilmod. He's got a chiyuv to learn Torah, and he has a son who has a chiyuv to learn Torah. Who should he give precedence to if there's only enough money to send one of them to yeshiva? So we guessed right. Who kodem libno? So at this point, it's really consistent with the Gemara up on top with regard to who liftos, who beno liftos, and we said who kodem libno, he's pod himself. Does everybody see that symmetry? Everybody, hello? But it's not so. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda says no. Maybe the son comes first. Under what circumstances does the son's yeshiva education come first? In beno zariz umemulach v'talmudo mitkayem biyado beno kodmo. If his son is sharp, that's called memulach. He's very sharp. He has a sharp intellect. Zariz means he's very dedicated. And talmudim is kind biyado. He remembers his learning. He's got it organized in his mind. You can test him. And he knows how to give it back to you. He's got it in his memory. And this is not so for the father. The father doesn't have those 3 elements, or at least not all of them. And therefore the son is superior to his father in his capacity for study of Torah. Says Rabbi Yehuda, in such circumstances, the son comes first. The father will remain behind. He'll send a check to the yeshiva, support his son's Torah education, and, try to eke out a living. If he gets rich, then he'll go to yeshiva as well. But in the meantime, until he gets rich, he's got to send his son to the yeshiva.
If the son has more intellect than him?
If the son has a greater, shall we say, capacity for success than his father. And how do you measure capacity, success in Torah learning? Gemara says in 3 ways. Number 1, zariz, which means that he's it's called alacrity in fancy English, meaning he's very dedicated. Number 2, memulach, he's very sharp. He can really pierce through all the layers and understand the deeper meaning of the Torah. And number 3, it's talmudim miskayin biyado. Again, you have to have a Gemara. If you don't have a Gemara, you don't have a Gemara. There's a Gemara over there. You want to get a Gemara, so I don't have to repeat the Gemara over and over again. You'll see it. Okay?
I think it's alright tomorrow.
All right, is that?
So the son had
I could do it with them.
Oh, so wait a minute. So maybe it's open there. The Dav said he left some Gemaras.
I think it's
There's a Gemara right there.
Is it here?
Pidyon Kidushin. Come here.
Okay.
Kviga.
So much for that.
We'll get
Or you can use your combo.
So you want to write this down?
There's on the wall right outside.
If you can write
Clarify
down
if I can do it.
Talmudo mitkayem biyado. Right? That means he's got a very great capacity for memory, and he remembers his Torah. Yeah.
But theoretically, I guess theoretically, but if the father is very humble, would he would send the son incorrectly?
Right. There's no room for, misguided humility here. This is what we call gabal livi b'darkei Hashem. You have to know who has the capacity to succeed in learning. But wait a minute, what happened to the principle of mitzvah de gufei adif? In other words, when it comes to pidyon aben, and it's a question of the father's pidyon for himself or his pidyon for his son, he's only got 5 slime, the Gemara says unqualified that he's poda himself. In the case of Talmud Torah, the Gemara should have added a principle here, applied a principle in an absolute way of mitzvah de gufe adif.
In this case, he fulfills two obligations, in a certain sense.
Correct.
One
And both are what?
mitzvah lufa.
Excellent. They're both mitzvah de gufe.
How?
So Rabbi, let me explain.
One of them,
Wait. Let me just explain, and then you'll, if you want to slug it up, you can slug it up. But let's first get to first base here. We're breaking new ground over here. What we're saying is that the father's obligation to teach Torah to his son is not a fill-in, is not a replacement for his son. He is not fulfilling the son's obligation as a shliach of the son, as we said in the case of Pidyon Ben with the Rivash, but rather it's his own personal chiyuv to teach Torah. As a matter of fact, a lot of the commentaries are wondering if there are two mitzvahs. One mitzvah to study Torah and another mitzvah to teach his son Torah. Well, guess what? The Rambam doesn't have two mitzvahs. He only has one mitzvah. Apparently, the mitzvah to teach his son is no different than the mitzvah to teach yourself. And you have to learn and you have to teach your son. They're both together integrated to form one mitzvah. And it's all mitzvah de gufen. And now you have two mitzvahs which are mitzvah de gufen. And now we have to find a barometer, a gauge, to determine if you have two mitzvahs de gufen, you only have enough money for one of them, which one takes priority. And the answer is, which mitzvah will be more successful? And we look at the mitzvah. In this case, what is that mitzvah? Talmud Torah. Everybody got that? Talmud Torah. What's going to expand the Talmud Torah in order that it reaches its maximum? And the answer is, it depends on the capacity of the father versus the capacity of the son. And if the capacity of the father is greater than that of the son, then that mitzvah de gufe will come first. Then he'll spend the money on his own tuition to pay someone to teach him. But if, on the other hand, the son's capacity for Talmud Torah is greater than the father's, then in such a case, the father will have to send the son to yeshiva, and he won't be able to, at this point in his life, to fulfill his personal mitzvah Talmud Torah, because he has a personal mitzvah. Again, I emphasize a personal mitzvah to teach his son Torah. Let's go on in the Gemara, and I'll show you exactly how this makes an afkamin. Ki ha de Rav Yaakov berei de Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Okay, then, so let's see what happens here. There's a son and a father and a grandfather. Let's get the names down. You want to write this down? So you have because the names are very critical here. There's a son by the name of Yaakov. What's his father's name?
Yes.
What?
Yitzchak.
No. In the Gemara. Are you with me in the Gemara? His father's name is Acha, Rav Acha.
Right.
Oh, you see it?
Yeah.
Berei means the son of Rav Acha. Okay, so the son's name is what, everybody? Yaakov, Rav Yaakov. The father's name is what? Rav Acha. What's the grandfather's name? Yaakov, right? Yaakov. It doesn't surprise us that little Yaakov, the son, is named after his grandfather. But that's not relevant to us today. What's relevant to us today is that Rav Acha, the father, sends Yaakov to yeshiva. And he's paying for his tuition. And where did Rav Acha send his son Yaakov? Shadre, he sent him, Avua, meaning the father, meaning Rav Acha, L'kamed Abaye. Okay, so who's Abaye in this picture? He's the Rebbe. Who's the Talmud? Rav Yaakov. Who's the father who's sending his son to learn by Abaye? Rav Acha. So far, so good? Now, Ki Asa. What happens is they get midwinter break, and Yaakov comes home. And his father wants to know, hey, does Yaakov know the Torah that he's being taught by Abaye? Kazia, he saw, the lo havi mechaded and shmaita. He was not sharp in his learning. He started stuttering. The father asked him a couple of questions on that which he's learning, and he didn't know. It's like you take an exam, and I did this many times, and you start to write fluff on the paper. You think maybe the teacher is gonna weigh your paper. So the more you write, and you don't know what the heck you're writing, the higher the grade you'll get, right? Because what the teacher does is he puts all the papers on top, and he sees which falls first. The All right, anyway, you don't like my you. So what goes on here is that all of a sudden Rav Acha realizes that his son, Rav Yaakov, whose tuition he's paying 35 grand a year, and he's not learning. I warn you guys, if your father finds out that you're not learning, he's going to tell you to go back home and you support the family, and he's going to come to Leva Torah and learn. Because that's what it says over here. Ki asa chazia de lo havi b'chinin shmaita amalei ano adifa minach. My Torah, says Rav Acha the father, is greater than your Torah. Tov at. Tov means shave, right? Tov always replaces shin. An Aramaic tov replaces shin, right? Like tlas is shalosh, right? So tov at. You sit down here. The azal ana. And I'm going to go and learn by Abaye. Says Rabbi Yehuda, what do you see from the story? You see that even though the father has an obligation vis-a-vis his son's Talmud Torah, and we said it's a mitzvah de gufe, but nevertheless, he has another mitzvah de gufe vis-a-vis his own guf, his own self. So he has two personal obligations, and now we're going to weigh one against the other. We're going to see who's sharper than the other. So all the time that Rav Acha sent his son Yaakov to Abaye, Rav Acha was under the impression that his son was doing excellent work in the yeshiva by Abaye. He was soaping up everything that Abaye said. But now that it came to the attention of Rav Acha, the father, that his son is wishy-washy, he's like very flexible, you know what I'm saying? He's like, he's not too sharp. So you sit here, you support the family. I'm going to go to the yeshiva. I'm going to learn by Abaye because my Torah is greater than your Torah. So Rabbi Yehuda says when you have two mitzvahs that are equal in Talmud Torah, you have a mitzvah de gufe vis-a-vis your own learning, a mitzvah de gufe vis-a-vis your son's Torah, then what comes first? It all depends. Let's weigh and see who's going to do better, who is more capable of maximizing his capability and understanding the Torah, having the Torah organized in his mind, paragraph after paragraph, and Talmudim is kind of the other. He remembers his Torah.
But what if like the rabbi wasn't for him, or he should like switch yeshivas,
Okay, you're giving a modern twist on it, which is okay. But back in the time of the Gemara, Abaye was like,
Oh yeah. If we're talking about Abaye,
Abaye was the chief. Abaye, by the way, was older than Rava, and he survived Rava, even though, Abaye and Rava are always at loggerheads, they're always debating with each other. But I have to tell you the truth. In my opinion, again, this is not scientifically reliable, but I think Abaye was sharper and more original than Rava. And that's why we don't paskin like Abaye, because he was too original. He always came up with a different perspective. But one thing I can tell you about Abaye, he was critical, very critical, meaning he looked at a sugya, Rava would come forward and interpret the sugya, and Abaye would look at it critically and ask one kasha after the other. Same thing happens with Reish Lakish, by the way, and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish is very critical of his Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan, and asks one question after the other to try to object to his Rebbe's Torah. And as a result, Rav Chashmaitito, which means the Torah becomes broader and deeper and greater. So on both sides, let's just summarize. What we have now is a contrast between Pidyon Haben and Talmud Torah. The father's obligation in Pidyon Haben of his son really belongs to whom? It's incumbent upon the son himself. The father is only what? A shliach. Hence, according to the Rambam, when the father's told his son, he makes a bracha of al Pidyon Haben like any shliach. Number two, since the father has his own chiyuv in a case where his father wasn't podim, and now he has to be pod himself. He also has his son to be pod, who's also bechor, and he only has sachakol 5 sloim. He'll be pod himself first because mitzvah the gufei adif. His chiyuv vis-a-vis his son's Pidyon Haben is, shall we say, a secondary chiyuv, relatively, because it's not a mitzvah the gufei. He's a shliach, and the real chiyuv is on the guf of the son. But now we get to Talmud Torah. And in Talmud Torah, we came to the opposite conclusion, that when the father is obligated to teach his son Torah, that's not a secondary chiyuv, that's not a shliach, He's not a shliach to teach his son Torah. That's part of his personal obligation of Talmud Torah. And that's what we're going to learn from the pasuk V'limadatem osam es b'nechem, and you will teach your sons. And that the Rambam quotes as the source for the mitzvah of learning. V'limadatem osam es b'nechem, teach your son. When you teach your son Torah, that's not a shlichus, that's your own personal mitzvah to gufay. And the only way that we can determine who comes first, the father or the son, is by selecting that one whose Torah will be maximized.
So, in the
And
first,
just by show of hands, how many people are following? Yeah? I'm not talking to the wall here. I mean, you came late, but yeah.
I think so. So, correct me if I'm wrong. The first here in the Pidyon Ben, we have this idea of mitzvah degufa adif, right? So,
And what does that apply to?
that applies to the father,
Excellent.
right? So the father gets kodem, gets priority.
Kedim.
Kadima. And in the second case, since Talmud Torah is not a chiyuv of a shaliach, the father actually has a chiyuv on himself.
Correct.
So it's two mitzvah degufas.
Correct.
Which
And
one
then
do
we
we
have to-
take?
Then to
We take the one which is
prioritize, we
more
have to
valuable.
weigh, correct, we have to weigh the the quality of the two mitzvahs.
So what if it would come to be that it was pidyon, two mitzvah degufa, one pidyon versus it's either pidyon or it's either Talmud Torah.
You mean, let's say he would need 5 shkolim to learn Torah.
But he needs the
I don't know which
extra
yeshiva. Tell me which yeshiva
He needs
would
the
have
extra-
that 5 slug.
Let's say it's
Yes.
100 slides. So what is it?
No,
Slides.
yeah, no.
And
Pidyon Ben only
he
requires
needs
5.
95.
Yeah.
So he is 100. He
Okay,
has to do
so you're asking a
either
great
5
question.
pidyon or 5 pidyon.
Let me ask you this. You're walking down the street and you see an old lady that she needs help crossing the street. What mitzvah is that? Chesed. That's called chesed.
Okay, yes, that's it.
You heard of it?
I should have guessed that.
Okay. Now imagine this. You're learning Torah, and there's a woman that you notice out of the corner of your eye that needs help with her packages crossing the street, blah, blah, blah. What should you do?
Well, the Torah can resume.
Talmud Torah Kanei Kula.
So Talmud Torah Keneged Kula means that Torah is a greater mitzvah than any other mitzvah. But in laws of Kedima, all mitzvahs come first before Talmud Torah. Meaning,
It's in the first sentence.
if I'm learning Torah and any mitzvah comes along, unless I postpone the mitzvah. Okay, maybe it's Derech Eretz Kol. It's really considered the following: Gadol Talmud Shemeged L'Dei Ma'asim. The reason why Talmud Torah is so critical and it's so high up on the agenda is because it's the preparation or the facilitator that makes it possible for you to do the mitzvahs. So whereas you have 612 mitzvahs, what's the key to fulfill any of those 612? It's Talmud Torah. And therefore, the Magen Avraham writes that women are obligated in Torah study. Don't publicize that. Unless you're teaching in the Dreshet Lid. So how does the Magen Avraham come off saying that a woman is obligated in Torah study? The Gemara says a woman is part of Torah study, but the answer is she has to learn that which she has to know. So, for example, for a woman to learn the laws of shofar or lulav or sukkah, and according to Magen Avraham, Kiddush Levana, she would not get a mitzvah Talmud Torah because it's not Almanas Lasos. It's not.
She didn't get the schar for Talmud.
I don't know. Maybe she gets some schar, but certainly not the schar of Talmud Torah. If on the other hand she learns, wait a second. If on the other hand she learns the laws of Hadlakas Ner Shabbos, which is a mitzvah to come find a woman, or she learns the laws of Nida or the laws of Hafrashas Chala, in those cases she gets a mitzvah according to Magen Avraham of Talmud Torah. As a matter of fact, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, if you want to make a note of it, it's very a mind-boggling Shulchan Aruch. Everybody talks about it. In Simon Mem Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch in Aruch Chaim, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins that a woman makes a bracha of Birchas Torah every single morning, and everybody jumps on it. Why? She's not obligated to mitzvah. How could she say Asher Kitchanim Tzosov Tzivona Lasok or Al Divrei Torah? How could she say such a thing? And the Magen Avraham answers because she is obligated to study Torah. Which part of Torah does she have to learn? the mitzvahs that are relevant to her. Do you follow? Yeah. Now, if you want to teach a woman about Ben Sorer Umora, which the Gemara says lo hayv lo nivra, we never had such a
Right.
thing.
So and we only
That
learn
would be a
it-
waste of time.
We only learn.
Well, it's still a mitzvah for us, even though it's
Maybe,
gonna happen.
but the Magen Avraham says Hab mitzvah in Talmud Torah is only with regard to those mitzvahs that are relevant, that are practical, that she's obligated. Then Sorah Mora, I don't think would fit that description. Okay,
Well,
but
men
they
also have a general mitzvah of Talmud Torah.
Rabbi,
who?
Men.
Men, yes,
So that's
men.
That's why.
It's all-
Men. Oh, I thought you were saying a woman should
No.
be learning events.
Rabbi,
Tough.
if we talk about what you said before, the old woman that's crossing the street and she needs help, right? When you're if you
That's a
stay
little
and
fast.
you learning, you're making a mitzvah, but are you like making an avera
Sure,
doing
I'm
that?
not even sure if you get a mitzvah in that case.
Yes. You're
Because,
still learning. There, you're
well, one of the conditions of learning is almanas lasos.
Video.
If you have a person who's learning shalom almanas lasos, meaning he's not interested in fulfilling the mitzvahs, that person, the Gemara says, I don't want to say it out loud, so I'll just whisper it. It's like he's taking poison. Torah itself could be poison.
Whoa.
Could you imagine?
crazy. There's cameras right here.
Okay, well, we don't see the cameras. So we don't see. we
Late
don't-
quotes, late quotes. Torah itself could be poison. How could it be poison? And
Because
because
we're talking about if
If
they're
you,
yeah.
anybody could distort the Torah. Someone who doesn't have the pure intention of fulfilling the mitzvahs, and he's just learning because what the Gemara calls almanas l'kanter, he wants to undermine the Torah. There are many ways of learning the Torah and distorting the Torah, and therefore we have to have, in the second bracha, which is called Va'arevna, that we say every morning. So what's the last word before the bracha at the end? Who remembers?
Lishma.
Lishma. Excellent. Torah has to be learned Lishma. And there are many interpretations of what Lishma means, but one of them is Lishem Asiyas HaMitzvah. So therefore, if a woman learns Lishem Asiyas HaMitzvah, she has that obligation to, as we mentioned, a bunch of mitzvahs before, but there are all many other mitzvahs, then she gets Schar Talmud Torah. That's the Shita of the Magen Avraham. Does everybody know when the Magen Avraham lived? It's very important for me that you have a historical perspective. Did the Magen Avraham live
Not too
in the
long ago.
20th century, in the 18th century?
18th and 19th.
No, he lived 5 centuries ago,
Oh,
500 years ago. He was a younger, he was in the generation after the Beit Yosef. When we look at Jewish halakhic history, and we talk about modern Jewish halakhic history, the cutoff point is the Beit Yosef, the one who wrote the Shulchan Aruch 5 centuries ago.
That defines a what?
That defines a brand new epoch in the development of halakha. So our perspective on anyone is either you're before the Beit Yosef or after the Beit Yosef. For example, we
Is there a
mentioned the
name for it?
Rivash. The Rivash is before the Beit Yosef. We mentioned the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham is right after the Beit Yosef, but almost a contemporary of the Beit Yosef. The Taz, almost a contemporary. The Marshal of Shlomo Luria, who's one of the pillars of Ashkenazi Psat, he was a contemporary of the Machaber, and the Ramah, Moshe Isserles, who wrote his own Shulchan Aruch, was a
And then burned it.
contemporary of the Beit Yosef. So I'm just
Right,
giving
he
you.
burned his, right?
What?
He burned his.
I don't know if you burnt it. I'd like to think that you could still get a hold of it somewhere. I once was at an auction. They were auctioning off the Ramah's copy of the Moreh Nevuchim of the Rambam. And the Ramah had notes up and down the margin on every single page. So just for the fun of it, I raised my hand and I offered $5,000.
Oh.
It sold for close to $500,000. So it was pretty funny when I offered $5,000 for the Ramah's own writing. Anyway, getting back to the sugya here, so we now have the following. In Milah, we say that the father's obligation vis-a-vis his son is his personal obligation. Therefore, if let's say the father was not we say in Yiddish gemalt. In other words, he was never circumcised, which, by the way, is very, very contemporary. Anybody know which sect of the population this is relevant to?
Oh, the reform.
No, I don't
Convert,
know.
yeah.
The chances of the what?
Yeah.
No, I was referring to the Russian Jews. A lot of Russian Jews
Or no,
never
yeah.
had sex.
Because
They
they
never had
lied.
circumcision.
They lied that they were Jewish.
They hid the fact that they were Jewish
Because they wanted to leave
it was
Russia.
against
They
the
would-
Soviet
yeah.
Union's,
Yeah.
communist regime.
But
So
they're
a
still
lot
Jewish,
of
right?
Russians who come either to Israel or to Brooklyn, New York, wherever they go, they undergo milah. So now you have a case for the father who has to undergo milah. So we have some of the davenings in our shul here in the Beit, what's called the Beit Shamir, that's Beit Shemesh Hay, Ramat Beit Shemesh Hay, and he and his father both had milah on the same day. Could you imagine? He was, I think, 25 years old, became a Baal Tshuva. His father wasn't a full-fledged Baal Tshuva, but on the way, and they both had milah on the same day. So I'm not talking about something out of, out of some, Ripley's Believe It or Not, if they still have that book. Anyway, this is something that I'm talking about, someone that davens in our shul. I see him in every shop.
Yeah, a number of years ago in my high school, there was someone who got that as well.
Yeah. In the high school, yeah.
I'm
He may have been Russian, I don't know.
I believe he was.
Yeah.
I have a friend as well, Russian, who got circumcised at 13.
13. So now the father has
Okay.
two obligations. He has to circumcise himself and he has to circumcise his son. Who would come first? Should we apply the principle of mitzvah de gufe adif in the light of Pidyon Talmud? Or we say no, he has two mitzvahs de gufe.
Well, there's also the Indian of the eighth day specifically. So the kid.
Right. Just to make life, yeah, excellent point. But just you're one step ahead of him. Just to go back one step, let's say that son is 13 years old, whatever age he is. Who should come first? Do we apply? See, I'm not asking you for a psak. I'm asking you for a conceptual to prove to me that you're machaded and tfei, that you're sharp and you learn. Should we say that we'll apply the principle that we applied to Pidyon Talmud, and that is mitzvah de gufe versus a mitzvah shalom gufe, because Pidyon Talmud is a mitzvah on the son, and we apply the same yardstick to milah? Or should we say no? In milah, even the father's responsibility and obligation vis-a-vis his son is a mitzvah de gufe, and therefore you have two chovas mitzvah de gufe. Which one should we apply?
First one.
No, because you remember that the Rambam says that when the father circumcises his son, what bracha does he recite? Lamul, with a lamed, a bracha with a lamed. Maybe you wrote it down to check it out and see if I'm right. A bracha with a lamed is for your own mitzvah de gufe, whereas when you are podeh your son, you make a bracha al, because it's not mitzvah de gufe, you're a shliach for the son. When you circumcise your son, or you appoint a moel to do the bloody work, right? In such a case, you're fulfilling your personal obligation vis-a-vis milah. So now you have two personal obligations, both the milah of your son and your own personal milah, both mitzvah de gufe. And now we have to find some sort of gauge or barometer to figure out which mitzvah should come first. Now, Aryeh makes a good point. Supposing the son is on his eighth day, who's a newborn baby. In that case, I would say, Kuliyamal Pligi, the son's milah comes first. He'll have to postpone his own milah for the sake of his son's milah, because then when you have two mitzvahs, both of which are mitzvah de gufe, you try to see which mitzvah maximizes the kiyum mitzvah, and in this case, the eighth day is the maximum of mitzvahs. So therefore, the son's milah comes.
Even though both are mitzvah,
Right, but again, that's the rule of
one
thumb.
has
Whenever you have two
exception.
mitzvahs, two obligations, both of which are mitzvah de gufe, then we have to weigh one mitzvah against the other, and we give priority to the mitzvah that's even greater than the other mitzvah.
If theoretically the son was was sick for 2 days, and then would his 8th day Indian be his 10th day, or
No,
not?
no, 10th day is the same as 90 years old. It's only the 8th day. After the 8th day, it's called Bila Shalom Bismana, and it doesn't matter whether you're 9 days old, 10 days old, or 1,000 days old. It's all the same. Okay, Rabosei, this is where we'll stop for today. I appreciate your participation. And Ritz Hashem, tomorrow I have to go to a wedding, but I'll have time to zoom the shir.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, so the wedding is in Ramat Gan, which I don't know if you guys have ever been to Ramat Gan, but it's very beautiful wedding hall there in Ramat Gan. I couldn't afford to marry both my children. Way beyond my pay scale. Even though Lev HaTorah, with all your tuition, pays a very hard. No, I'm just joking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.